Yo, what is up, guys? It is Legendary 7 here. After, all the Joker and stuff, and basically finishing the game, I asked you guys, what do you guys want? A build showcase, or would you guys want a party member tier list? And I did hear some complaints also about, maybe wanting an equipment showcase as well. So I'll try to do that after this. It won't be too long of a video, but I'll just show all my endgame builds, all the equipment you need for, I think, optimal playthroughs, and, all the personas at max levels for not just me, but all the party members as well. So I think that'll be pretty helpful for both people. Also, another thing is, I never thought I was the type of person to do this, but a lot of you guys aren't subscribed. Look, I'm trying to hit 10K by the end of this year, and if you really enjoy the content I do, well, then drop a sub. It really helps out. Thank you so much. Oh yeah, guys, one little teeny thing before we jump into this. I want to thank my good friend C2 on Discord, because he basically calculated all the damage modifiers in Persona 3 Reload, and he has them all in this type. I'll just drop the link down in the description so you can understand also how calculating damage works in Reload. But most of these placements are going to be on their damage outputs, and I definitely had to use this multiplier guide and stuff like that. So just huge shout out to him. And yeah, let's do this. Alright, now when we do a party member tier list, there's a lot of factors we need to include. So I'm gonna include basically these big three. How much damage can they output at best? What is your maximum amount of damage? I'm talking amps, boost, all your equipment, the best equipment you got, all that stuff. I'm gonna be calculating that. And then we got second, how good is your synergy with the rest of the cast? Do you hold up on your own? If you're just a one-trick pony and that's all you really do, that's not gonna get you the best placement, whereas you have multiple different uses. And then three, how good are you throughout the entire game? If you're really good at the beginning of episode Aigis, but then you start falling off at the ending, or you're really good at the ending, but then you're really garbage at the beginning, well, that's obviously going to have a major factor on your placement as well. And I'm going to add up all the points I'm giving for all three of these categories, and then that's going to be your final score, which I'll place between S or D. Good. Out the way? We got that out the way? Nice. Let's start with the worst placement on the tier list, and this might get some people a little pissed. I mean, yeah, of course Yukari was going to be last. What did you expect? She was the worst in base reload, and she's even worse now. It's crazy because they actually completely massacred her. I mean, sure, there were a few arguments for why she could be decent or at least viable in base reload, but there's no question. She's more of a detriment than even actually useful. First, let's talk about her damage. Her damage, with the calculation of a concentrate, win boost, win amp, and off a shift boost, because that's the max damage she can do, is about a base of 137. That is pathetic. That is garbage. That is the lowest calculated base power output of any character on this list. So automatically, her damage she's working with, not the best. It doesn't help the fact that she doesn't get any severes like Mitsuru does with Diamond Dust, and her magic doesn't really have any special properties like shock or boost. So automatically, she's kind of just there. Now her 30 charge, again, healing is a kind of a thing that will boost your 30 pretty fast, so sure, but it's not like her 30 is anything special. It's just kind of there. Okay, yeah, cute damage, but that's all she's giving you. Now her equipment is kind of nice, I guess. Her auto concentrate bow is decent, and then she has these RC Ghetto, which is a shift boost. That's the best armor you can give her. She also has these Tower Rebellion shoes, but what are you going to use those for? She's not going to be hitting crits. Honestly, I'd argue that her pierce attack bow, her natural weapon, is more likely to get damage than her actual concentrated magic attacks, because Fizz is just that stupid in this game. If you don't have Fizz, you generally just are going to be lower on this tier list. It's sad that it works like that, but it's the truth. Now, the one thing we're going to go to the utility now. The one thing people glazed her back in base reload was, yes, the infamous 11 SP Meteoronohan, and she doesn't even really get that until later. So her healing apex you won't get until maybe about late mid ladder, or a solid mid ladder in the game. And when you're facing enemies that strong in the beginning, that's not really that you're suffering. Keeping Yukari on your team is genuinely a wasted slot. Her healing is literally not even keeping up with most of the shadows, considering how they actually raised the difficulty and they actually balanced most of the shadows in this game. So she's not even really doing the one job she was set to do good. So you can replace her healing with literally a couple of items. So she doesn't have the infamous 11 SP Meteoranahan until very, very late game. In fact, Meteoranahan itself, she doesn't get it till level 79. And she doesn't get Wind Amp until her final skill. So you won't get Amp plus Boost until like, what, the final boss? So when do I even get to use Yukari at her peak? So now we're going to cover her consistency. She doesn't really have a good one. It's not like she has a peak or a low, because it's always just a low. I'd say the best is when you max her out. I guess, sure, then I guess she's somewhat viable, but what? Then you're like only one boss left until you're finished with the game? She really struggles the entire time. Durgy is none too special. Her equipment is it's bare bones. I guess it's the best they could do with her kit, and her magic attacks are just she just suffers because she's only a heal bot, and you could replace that with anything. And when her damage is not anything either, she is just garbage. She's generally the worst character in this game. For the numbers I'm gonna plug in, I'm gonna give her damage a solid 1. I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Her consistency, I'm gonna give it a 1. Yeah, really nothing to work with here. Utility, I will give her at least a 2 because, at least she does something, I guess, which can still be replaced though, which is why she's only getting a 2. So her in total score is gonna be 4. So plugging her into this tier list, I'm going to put her in a solid D tier. Look, if she was just a little bit better, had maybe a touch of fizz, had a few more uses than just healing, I'd put her at least in C tier for viable, but I don't even think she's that. So we're going to cover the next character, which I think is what they should have did with Yukari, but they didn't.
Artemisia!
Now, Mitsuru Korijo used to be worse than Yukari back in base reload, and that's mainly because of Yukari's Tranquility. I didn't really mention Yukari's Tranquility because in this game, it gets basically outshined by Koromaru's Power Howling. So yeah, there's really no need to auto-concentrate the whole team. You can just auto-charge, because obviously physical is better. But it's the one thing that Yukari had that put her over Mitsuru. But I'd say Mitsuru is better in episode Aigis now, simply because the fact that they gave her a Vorpal Blade. And I know that's kind of stupid to base one character being better than another just because of one move, but at least Mitsuru actually can output solid, good, decent DMG now. And even though it's at the end of the game, I'm going to calculate that end of the game DMG, which is 470. So you can see the gap between her and Yukari at max damage. Also, Mitsuru can actually get builds that support this. You can get a weapon that gives her slash boost. You can give her accessory that gives her slash amp. And not only that, you can give her some auto Taric Abelian shoes. So just like that, she doesn't have too bad of a crit rate, and you have a Vorpal Blade. So her max amount of damage isn't too bad. But again, this is like very, very, very end-game-ish. I'm pretty sure Vorpal Blade is the last skill she gets. So she's basically dog shit throughout the entire game until that point. Now, in terms of utility, her elements is basically what her niche is. Same with her trait. Her trait is mostly like, if you can get elements, then your crit rate increases. But that's kind of stupid because the fact is you're never gonna land any elements besides just common enemies, and you really shouldn't be using elements against common enemies anyway because they'll be dead in a couple of hits. So if you're actually trying to use them on important boss fights and the door boss fights, which are actually pretty hard, she's utterly trash. Like, why would you even use her? And that's her entire little stick right there. So there's no point. Now, also the fact is her Durgies, they're kind of also mediocre. Her ice one is okay, but her second one is dog shit. It has horrible DMG because I don't know why you would make a piercing Durgy almighty. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. You can't get any stacks or boosts with that, and the damage is just worse because it's just almighty. It was already piercing. There's no reason to do that. And if you want to glaze the debilitate that comes with it, again, just use a Sutra. There's literally no reason to do all that. So her utility is pretty meh. Her damage at least is adequate enough. And her consistency, I'd say, again, she only peaks at the very end. Throughout the entire game, she's kind of mediocre. Again, the Concentrate, Diamond Dust, that infamous combo, because of the Vorpal Blade, she doesn't even get Diamond Dust, I believe, until like very, very late. So now her entire build is kind of shifted to this only relying on Vorpal Blade. And even then, you don't get it to the very, very end. So it kind of just defeats Mitsuru's entire purpose. So she struggles in the beginning. She doesn't really have the best endurance either for keeping up in actual hard, challenging door fights. And she kind of just has mediocre magic damage. And her ailment cheese and her traits are kind of mid as well. So plugging her in, I'm going to give her, for damage, she at least gets a 4. I'll give her a 4. So not bad. And then for her utility, I'll give her a 2. But then for consistency, her peaks and lows, all that, I'm going to give her a solid 2. Now, plugging her into the tier list, I would put her D, but at least she serves some type of purpose. Like, Rakunda is more important than Secunda in terms of debuffs. And at least you can use Mitsuru for setups. And the Vorpal Blade is something. So I'm going to put Mitsuru in C. She's viable enough to be used. Better than Yukari.
Sona's ready. Here I come.
And here we got Ken. Now, Ken really got a glow up this time around. He was always a solid party member, but thanks to how strong he is off the bat, I can almost say certainly you will at least use Ken once in your playthrough. In the beginning of the game, he covers off the bat 3 elements: Light, Elect, and Pierce. Not to mention his Elect skill is a medium damage rank skill, which he already gets before the electric guy, Akihiko? Come on. That's all day, baby. He gets 2 Pierce moves, which are Cruel Attack and Arrow Rain, which are fairly strong and deal pretty good solid damage this early. His equipment is good, giving him a shift amp on his shoes and a pierce boost or a light boost for his weapon, meaning you could choose to focus on either light and amp boost or pierce and amp boost. Of course, I would suggest pierce because his max damage potential can reach a power output of 425, which is around the same level as Mitsuru. His trade is okay with recovering SP every so often per turn. I mean, it's nothing too crazy, but you know, it's welcomed. And then he has his Divine Intervention though, which is where his Thurgy really shines. I call it the ultimate defense and the ultimate offense by using Tetracon and Makaracon while also giving a full heal. This is perfect for cheesing the Reaper and just letting the Reaper basically kill itself over time. Now, in terms of utility, his kit is pretty solid with a wide variety of weaknesses to cover, and he has physicals to also go with it. He also has both Karns too. Now, his Heat Riser in his build isn't really needed because the protagonist usually has an auto persona that does that for us, but I could see Heat Riser having a few uses early in the game. He also comes with Healing too, and guess what? He gets fucking Meteoranahan quicker than Yukari does. How does that even work? How do you do the healer's job better? That's insane. Now, covering consistency, I'd say this is his only issue because while he starts off strong, he doesn't really get any better throughout the entire game. He kind of starts off as a neutral character. He kind of ends up as a neutral character. He starts off strong, but then has a basic finish is what I'd say. So plugging him in, I'd give his damage like a 4, similar to Mitsuru, his utility a 5 though, and his consistency a 5, totaling his score at 14. And as for his tier, I would put him in the same as Mitsuru, but in front of her because he is a little better, but I think he's nothing too crazy. He's viable enough to be used, and I'd say that's about it.
Sonata-senpai's looking intense.
Take it away!
Now, Akihiko was quite the mixed bag. His once top 3 spot he no longer has due to him being pretty shit in the beginning, and that's kind of the only reason why. He stays with basic Elect DMG and doesn't even get Zionga before Ken does, and he also has kind of shaky physicals. Well, just one physical really, and it's just Sonic Punch. It's dog shit. And Ken actually gets pretty good physicals earlier than Akihiko does, so some people argue that Ken is more viable than Akihiko, but that only takes place in the beginning, because once you get Gigantic Fist with Akihiko at level 52, he becomes just as he used to be before, and his maximum DMG with God's Hand, using shifts and boosts and all that, his power output is a whopping 783. And remember, Ken and Mitsuru were only pulling numbers in the 400. We'll only have like a power output of 400. So he does like double the amount of damage they do. And it's enough damage where he can one-shot the Reaper as well. So he is not to be messed with, and he isn't poor by any means. Now his equipment supports his build by giving him access to Strike Amp gloves, which you can get from the antique shop, and he also uses accessories that can give him a strike boost. So there you go. He also comes with Elect boost and amp on his persona naturally. So his third G is automatically stronger than I think all third Gs in the game besides physical ones. And his straight buff amp, which also basically multiplies buff effects on him. So Tarakaja, which is attack up, is usually a 1.4 multiplier, but on Akihiko it's a 1.82, making him a powerhouse. Overall, his utility is really nice, having a touch of healing if I wanted to, good physicals, good signature magic, and even some support. Now his consistency, as I mentioned, is the only part where he kind of suffers, because it takes him a while to actually be considered to be used. To be honest, he's kind of shit in the beginning. I could replace him with Ken, honestly, but then eventually Ken, as I mentioned earlier, he doesn't really get anything new, and that's when Akihiko just starts turning into the powerhouse he once was. It's just a little late. But regardless of that, plugging him into the numbers, I'm going to give him for damage, an 8, his utility is 6, and I'm going to give his consistency a 5, giving him a total score of 19 out of 30. I'm going to place him in a solid B tier. Good character, just takes a bit to spice up, but he's not bad by any means. Now it's time for P3's beloved mascot, the dog. Similar to Akihiko, the once top spot of Persona 3 Reload has been snatched from this great puppy, as he slightly is worse than he used to be. Once again, it's the fact that it takes him a long time to get all the juicy stuff in his kid. Look, everyone knows Koromaru still has all those juicy stuff, but they slightly changed him a bit, where I have to say he's unfortunately a little worse. First off, Gets Away, Debilitate, Revolution, and Power Howling. His Gets Away, not even here anymore. His Debilitate, takes forever to get. Revolution, sure, he gets it off the bat, and his Power Howling, he doesn't get until late mid-ladder. So, yeah, just like that, all of the things that made him great, I can understand the Debilitate, because we always got the Debilitate late, but everything else we basically got with Koromaru off the bat, and now we have to literally earn everything. So he's stuck with being a Revolution bot for like nearly half the game until he gets his Power Howling. That's my only issue with him, really. Besides that, the moment he locks Power Howling, it's really over for the rest of the game. It's just big physicals and crits all day. Now, his damage is solid, not really his main purpose, but if he wanted to do some good damage, he could, getting a nice 462, around the same level as Kenny Mitsuru, so hey, you know, he's got that going at least. And his 3rd G Power Howling is arguably the best in the game, just because of how much you can capitalize with it, while Hounds of Hades is kinda left in the dark. Now, his trait is mid, since Auto Secunda is the worser of the 3 buffs. If only it was like Auto Racunda or something, oh my god, if it was Auto Racunda or Tarunda, he would have put Mitsuru out of a job. But having Debilitate and Revolution is huge in the utility department, and it makes him more of a valued asset than any other party member. As for his consistency, like I mentioned, he suffers similar to how Akihiko does, but it doesn't take away his abilities, it only delays them. Now, plugging him into the meter, I'm going to give his damage a 3, his utility a 10, and his consistency a 6, giving him a score of 19. As for the tier list, I'm putting him in B tier, the same tier as Akihiko. Look, I believe Koro is more important as support when compared to Akihiko, so I'm going to put him slightly higher. Now, Junpei. Similar to base reload, Junpei still retains his peakness from before. He gets crit boost trait fairly early, which allows him out the gate to become a crit machine that we all know. With a nice array of physicals, he completely destroys any shadows that come across his path. As for his max damage, he is on par with Akihiko, doing a nice power output of 760. His equipment also allows him to get an amp and boost, as well as he can use magic too. He also gets Fire Amp and Fire Boost. You can give him Amp for his accessory. He also has a Fire Boost sword too, so his kit for equipment is really good. Now, his utility is also pretty good. He mostly focuses on Fizz, but he also has a little bit of support and a nice magic to go with it as well. As is for his consistency, he starts off with a solid start and just gets better from there, unlike some characters who have a rough beginning. And speaking of his 3rd Gs, Blaze of Life is also the strongest magic attack in the game, and Hack a Slash is also the strongest 3rd G in the game. So he carries both the strongest 3rd Gs for magic and for physical, so that's hilarious. Plugging him into the numbers, I'm going to give him an 8 for damage, his utility is a 6, and his consistency is an 8, putting his total score at 22. And for the tier list, I'm giving him a solid A tier. Goated crit pay as always.
Focus.
And for the final ranking, we have Metis, the newcomer, which just fucking gaps everyone. Metis is undoubtedly the best party member in episode Aigis. With her insane damage, her amazing sister amp trait, which is a 40% fucking boost off of shifts from Aigis, is probably the best equipment in the game, and she just destroys everyone by a landslide. She also has great physical skills early as hell, like Herculean Strike and Deathbound, only in the level 30s and early 40s. I mean, that's honestly insane. Now, as I mentioned, her equipment is the best in the game. She can easily stack Strike Amp and Strike Boost from from 3 fucking combos. You can give her her axe, which has strike boost on it. You can give her her armor, which has strike boost on it. Her shoes have strike amp on it. She also has a strike amp axe, and she also has her accessories as well. So she's just a powerhouse. Now her third Gs are also pretty strong, mainly charging blitz. Or Geo mode is fine, but personally I don't like when the AI controls, at least reload AI controls my party members. So her utility is also great, coming with magic even if you wanted to, doing Mitsuru and Yukari's job also, which is fucking hilarious. And she also has insta-heal, which immediately cures her from ailments that same turn, so she's mostly not getting hit with any ailments besides poison, which is great for serious fights. As for her consistency, she starts off fucking great and ends great, basically making her the most optimal and ideal character for any episode Aigis experience. Plugging her into the damage meter, give her a 10. For utility, I'm going to give her a 6 and 10 for consistency, giving her a total score of 26, the highest score out of everyone, and placing her at a nice, comfortable spot, S tier. So this is what my entire tier list looks like at the end. Of course, you can disagree with me and use whoever the hell you want. This is more just a guideline if you want to play extremely optimally, or you're having trouble playing the game and you're like, hey, how come this Shadow's giving me more trouble than this one, or how come, you know, whatnot. This should maybe help you with some slight solutions on possibly picking up a better team. But again, you can play whoever the hell you want. This is just more like a guideline. But I will say this, the damage numbers don't lie. That is an 100% calculated in facts. So yeah, besides that, everything else is more an opinion. So yeah, I know you guys wanted a build showcase and equipment showcase, so I will get to that shortly. Lastly, just wanted to thank Cito one more time for just all the information about the deeper levels of the game. Really appreciate that, and I love you guys all. Take care and have a good one.